But we ready. So, honey, I had a lot to get to today, so just bear with me. And we only got, we got an hour, so we'll get through pretty much all of it. But I'm literally going to jump right in. Hello, guys. My name is Nico Nicole, and this is Pretty Politico. I do political commentary from a social aspect of things. I come on every Tuesday at 2 p.m. I'm calling it Tuesdays with Nico because my favorite book is Tuesdays at Maury's, so this is a homage to that. I have a degree in political science and sociology, so I enjoy these things. So I talk about politics from a social standpoint and also a globalization standpoint, and how can in political science and sociology. So I enjoy these things. So I talk about politics from a social standpoint and also a globalization standpoint, and how can it can affect us. So that's what we're going to talk about today, because we are 8 days into the election, baby. This is it. We're here. We're at the finish line. So I figure I'd come in today and give you guys the weekly highlights. You know how we do. So we're going to just jump in and discuss that. Early voting is open. The election is Tuesday, November 5th. So that is next week. You guys already know. Y'all should go do the same thing. Put your ballot, put your information in. If you guys already got it, literally mine just came in, so today. So you guys should go do that whenever you can. I'm in Jersey, so maybe mine is a little early, but at least you guys can get that out the way so that there is no discrepancy on who wins this election. Also, I have t-shirts that I made for both Kamala and Trump, because again, this is a bipartisan page. I do my best, y'all, because y'all know I'm unbiasedly biased. I say what I want to say about both candidates. So you guys can order t-shirts. I'm unbiasedly biased. I say what I want to say about both candidates. So you guys can order t-shirts. You guys can order t-shirts. I for Trump. I actually have some more in the pipeline, but this is my first page that's like trying to promote things. So I did what I could. I got the 2 that I could get out to you guys just before the election. So if you guys want to purchase a shirt, please feel free to do that. The link is in the description bar. Okay, we're going to jump right in. This week we had a lot of endorsements, big heavy duty endorsements. We had many interviews, dozens of rallies, because we are in the final stretch of it all. If you guys see me looking down, I'm on my iPad because y'all know I be taking notes. If y'all know me taking notes. So it was a heavy night. So Trump, he's going to be on Hannity tonight. So 9 p.m. he'll be on Hannity. So we'll probably get another. This is really, he hasn't been doing a lot of media-driven interviews, but I think the Joe Rogan interview kind of boosted his popularity again, so he's kind of capitalized on that in the final stretch. So he'll be there tonight. VP Harris, she will be in DC tonight, and she'll be at another one of her rallies, because the difference between her and Trump is trying to get the attention of the people and remind you who he is. Kamala is trying to go to the small towns, integrate, and kind of so she can introduce who she is. So that's the difference between the two. Tim Walz will be in Georgia tonight, and JD Vance will be in Michigan. So they're both on the ground campaigning, home stretch. Of course, we had big, huge, like I said, endorsements this week. We had Eminem in Detroit for the DNC. We had Death Row in NYC for the RNC, and we had Beyonce in Texas, of course. You know, that was like a big deal. But Joe Rogan's interview with Trump kind of usurped that, but it still was a good boost for the people who like Beyonce, right? And a lot of jokes for the late night hosts, they're all talking about shut up and dribble, essentially. They're saying, why is she talking? We just wanted to see her sing. So that's a big kind of media thing that is going around. Melania stood up for Trump because, you know, she do not like that man. She got to deal with that man. But he paid to play, baby. So she showed up and showed out, and she showed up on her book tour. She's on Fox News doing a book tour. She had some beautiful things to say about, like, her experiences as a first lady and what she went through, her visits to Britain and the Rose Garden and things like that. So she has all these photos in her book. She's promoting that. Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker were also there for the Republican Party at their rallies for Trump. And Trump is going to be in Pennsylvania again today as well. So he's going to be busy because he's on Hannity tonight. And then he's in Pennsylvania during the day. Harris is in DC tonight, and she needs to do more interviews, but she did do a pretty cool interview with what's his name, Club Shay Shay. So I thought that was a good one. So I was gonna do Kamala's interview with Shay Shay first, but I will watch like the last little bit of Trump, so I have that like fresh in my mind. So we're gonna go over Trump's interview with Joe Rogan. I had a ball. I'm sorry, guys. I told y'all I like Trump like y'all drunk uncles. He get on my nerves and I don't always trust him, and I know he be telling lies, but they be funny as hell. So that's how I personally feel. And then I'm from Jersey, so you know, Trump is my people. Like, he over here, I've been to his house, like legit, like had not his house, but you know, he has this networking huge mansion in Bedminster, and he has like a golf course out there where he sometimes lives when he's in Jersey. So I know the guy, like, you know what I'm saying? We know him. And then Atlantic City, so kind of Jersey people are very familiar with Trump, especially New York and Jersey. But I definitely think more Jersey, because New York is like for business. Jersey is where you rest your head. It's like where you really get to know the guy. So I don't think Jersey people hate Trump. It's just, we know how messy he is because we seen Jersey City. But that's neither here nor there. So he talked about in the Joe Rogan podcast, he talked about his adjustment to the White House, and I'm going to just like run through this kind of briefly because I want to give each candidate half an hour. So Trump talked about his adjustment to the White House. He went from a celebrity to the president with no experience, and he said he had to shift into what he would call survival mode. So he felt like his whole like terms were about survival and determination, because you know how like when you the new kid on the block and everybody got the information and they don't really want to tell you nothing, they want you to learn and drop the ball when you just start that job because they be hating to see if how you gonna do. That's how they were treating him. So he was like, he literally hired the smart people he knew like from outside, because none of the internal people were really trying to give him the information like that. So he's like, okay, well, I can't get it from you, so I'm going to get it from people who also study this stuff that are my friends. So he outsourced a lot of information to try to get as much information about the presidency as he can. And he said his presidency is very unique. I think he said, I have it somewhere written, but he basically said his is, I want to say Jimmy Carter. Yeah, he said outside of like Jimmy Carter, he had like one of the most, and Ronald Reagan, I think he had one of the most unique presidencies in terms of being like a celebrity and then becoming like this huge politician. So he talked about that. He said that he said he didn't realize how much power the presidents have. He said that he was able to appoint 10,000 appointments, and but he said there's too many of them. He said he appointed himself over 10,000, and he said that included Treasury, Secretary of State, Secretary of Human Diplomacy, Homeland Security, so many things that he put in place himself. And he said that is a lot of power for a president to have, which he had no idea that we have. So he feel like some of that should be like tempered a little bit, and it shouldn't be so much power for, well, it shouldn't be so many departments that he have to manage if he's the one overseeing everything, because how can you manage over 10,000 people? Like, he's basically saying you need to consolidate it so he can have an idea of what's going on in each department. He said he wasn't a Washington guy, he's a New York City guy. He said he was a big donor in both parties back in the early 90s. He said he was a Democrat, and then he did the Reform Party, which didn't work out because he said without Congress, there's no decision being made. And the thing about the Reform Party, aka the Independent Party, just like RFK, they can't get Congress. So it's Congress is two parties, Dems and Republicans. There's no independence really like that in Congress, which, I mean, I guess Bernie Mac would be as similar as you can get to an independent, but he is still Bernie Sanders, but he's still a Democrat. So he was saying, like, with that, he was forced to choose Democrats or Republicans because he tried to do the reform and it didn't work. So then he went to the Republicans because he's like, at least they would work with him. But he said the Democrats had such a tight hold on the that they wouldn't even let him into the party, because he said he might have would have been a Democrat, but they wouldn't let him in. He said if you are independent, the system will just eat you alive and just rake up all your money, which is what we saw with RFK. So he used that as a backdrop. Oh, no, it was Ronald Reagan. So he said Ronald Reagan is the closest thing to him. But the difference between him and Ronald Reagan is Ronald Reagan did 2 terms in Congress, then ran for president. And I didn't fact check this because neither did Joe Rogan. I'm just telling y'all what the man said. And then he said Ronald Reagan was the closest thing to him, won 2 times in Congress, then ran for president, unlike Trump. Trump was the only president to ever run from celebrity to president. So he said his situation was so unique. And then he talked about, he said the beauty about the system is there are smart people there. But the problem is the smart people are so indoctrinated to the system. And he gave an example how one of the guys he knew has been in Congress for 28 years, but have never done anything controversial until Trump got into office and pushed him a little bit like, you know, this is wrong, so you need to change this. He said it's a good way for, he said politics is a good way for people, good people, normal people to eat and survive. He said, but it's not a good place for policy and changes to happen because these people are using the political threshold as their bread and butter. And if they're using it as their bread and butter, they're going to make compromising decisions. Whereas he's saying, I'm rich, bitch. And I ain't got to compromise. So that's essentially what he is coming from that perspective, which to me, that could be a beauty and a curse. So, because sometimes if you don't need nobody, no money, then you can kind of do what you really do what you want to do. So we got to find out. We never really found out what he wanted to do because he talks about that COVID shut his whole kind of operation down. So he was saying if COVID never happened and he would have went into a second term, he would have had all this success that we didn't get a chance to see because he felt like the Democrat, in his mind, he didn't say this blatantly, but I kind of, you know, that thing he kept talking about the weaving. I read between the lines, and essentially what he was saying is he feel like the Democrats created COVID, which shut him down, which didn't allow him to really be as successful as he could have been if COVID didn't happen. He said like COVID was one of the single things that kind of was a detriment of his campaign. And so what else we talked about? He talked about, he said, he asked Rogan, why do you think people like me? And I don't understand, like, y'all all gravitate to me. He's like, basically, I didn't ask for this. You guys asked for this. And he said, Joe Rogan said to him, like, well, because you're not pre-planned or prepared, you sound like the common guy. And he said, you know, even sometimes you're very lighthearted and you come off as like a comedian when getting a job done. And then that's when Trump said, well, you know what's interesting about that is I really was supposed to win. He said, but Biden was a consequential president because of my mishap. Well, he didn't call it a mishap, but that's what he basically meant, because of his mishap with COVID. Because at the end of the day, he is the president. He do got to take responsibility of it, even if he feels like it's the Dems' fault. He was the president. So he said because of that incident with COVID, Biden won, and he knows that. But this time, he feel like he can come back and essentially fix it. That's why it says on his thing says what Trump will fix it. That's what he means. He talked about Israel and said, you know, the same. He has his spiel all the time that the war wouldn't have broke out if he was in. He said now Iran is getting a lot of funding. He talked about all that. He talked about conflating his about how The View and Kamala and everybody are conflating his. Baby, yes, that's what I do every week. I come here and I give you the weekly highlights on both candidates, and I summarize. So I watch 3 hours of content, so you don't have to. So, and you said you Dems, I'm an independent. So thank you, baby. Clock that. So anyway, what? So anyway, so he talked about Kamala conflating his ideas of being like assumed to be the next Hitler, and he just basically said it's stupid. He said that he called Joe Behar a flip-flopper. He said he named her, Whoopi, a bunch of people from the 2000s who were like pretty up and coming. He named a bunch of them and said they were my friends, they were this, but now they're flip-flopped on me. So he didn't like that. And he and Joe Rogan said, one thing I noticed about you is you like to weave in and out and the conversation, and that you like kind of don't tell the story straight, but you got to tell this whole. And he said that's how he likes to tell stories, because he feel like it gets you locked in. That's why he's able to sit in these 3-hour conversations. And you know, he had to insult her, and then he said an insult and talk about how Kamala couldn't do it. If she came, and she would be passed out on the floor, honey. So he talked about that. And then he also talked about the 60 Minutes interview. And again, he continued to go on and say, you know, insults about her. And he said that 60 Minutes favored Kamala because they cut off half of the interview. So he didn't like that. And he said, but there is a clip that's going on. And Joe Rogan had the clip, but apparently for copyright, they couldn't play the clip. So I don't know if you guys want to go look up that clip. I'm definitely going to go look up that clip. If I can find it, I'll post it. But yeah, he said it was some kind of clip that she got the answer crazy wrong, and Joe Rogan was going to play it, but they couldn't play it because of copyright. So they also talked about that crime is up, even though the Democrats are saying crime is down. And Joe Rogan had his people pull up information where crime is up in several of the major cities, but the way they calculated the crime left out major cities, so it deflated the actual number. So they talked about that a lot. They also talked about the cops and how they're giving up and not saving people, how when people call the cops now ain't nobody coming because they're depressed and deflated. And but then Joe Rogan kind of did a little bit hint at like the whole immunity thing, and like, and it sounded like Donald Trump was basically saying it's not that he's trying to get them full immunity, but they are depressed and there's no backing for the police. He's like, I don't feel like they should defund the police. He said he feel like they should fund the police, but fund them for mental health counseling, fund them for better training, and fund them to be able to properly help people. Me personally, that's a little tricky one, because I think it's always going to be a tension with police officers and Black Americans, because of the history of police in America was built on catching it. I can't say that word. Catch a Black person by the toe, literally. Any, meeny, miny, mo. Y'all know that's about slaves, right? Any, meeny, miny, mo. Catch a by the toe. If he holler, let him go. Any, meeny, miny, mo. And the go don't mean go back home. The go mean out of here. So that is the history of police officers in America. So it's always gonna be that contentiousness. So I don't think you should ever give full immunity. But I do think when Joe Rogan said you should fund mental health, fund psychiatric treatments for them, 1,000% for sure. I think they need that, because he was saying how some of them, he knows them, and like they're on the field and they could see somebody right in front of their face, and then they gotta go right back into the job. No counseling, no treatment, no nothing, no PST help. No medications, nothing. And that's for any human being. We're not animals. It's going to take a psychological toll on us. So for that, when he said that, I said, I actually agree with that. I said Joe Rogan is eating really good off of this show, because there were so many commercial breaks. Oh my God, it was hard. It was like, girl, every 5 minutes it was a commercial breaks. But neither here nor there. He talked about Kamala is leading the rhetoric regarding transgenders and sex changes and illegal immigrants, and he kind of didn't address it. He just addressed it in terms of what he's been saying about he would not let men in women's sports. And he said, I know I'm going to get a lot of controversy around that, but I'm standing by that. That's essentially what he said. Then he kind of changed the topic, and he started talking about how Kamala stole his tax with no tips, which is actually true, because I heard it myself. And I even told y'all, y'all can't go back and watch my old lives anymore. And then I did. But if y'all would have watched my old lives, you would have seen that I mentioned that that she stole that from him, because I told y'all. And that's me being unbiased, because she definitely did. Because he said it like for about a week straight, and then she said it the next week, just took his whole stuff. And then tariffs, he said the tariffs word, he said it's a beautiful word. He said the word is so beautiful, it's more beautiful than love. I fell out. That man. So he said that what he's going to do is tariff. He talked about a president named McKinley, and how in 1800s to the 1890s, he replaced taxes with tariffs, which essentially means no tax on American people, but taxes on the exports and imports that are coming on goods only. So no taxes on us, taxes on goods. That's cool and all, but I do think about Cuba when I think about all that, because they got all these supermarkets, but it's nothing in the stores because they are being taxed so harshly to import things. So for me, one of the things we always learned in school is like, if, again, I have a degree in political science and sociology, so this is actually what I studied. One of the things we learned about politics and globalization is if we tax them, they double tax us. So like they talked about the chicken coop war or something back in like the early 1900s as well. And in that time, there was like this tax on chickens in order to send them overseas. And so chickens went from 150 to 250, and then they said we don't want y'all chickens no more. So it took a big hit on chicken farmers here in the USA because the overseas people no longer wanted our chickens, and that's still in effect to this day. They don't really want our chickens over there. So you go overseas, a lot of times chickens are like $6, like $16. They are like crazy high. And another thing that he talked about was, you're not a Kamala guy, you're a Khabib guy, which was the MMA reference. So I looked that up for y'all because I was like, what is that? So the Khabib guy, he is a MMA superstar, like where he's basically beating everybody up. And then he's basically like, you're not that kind of guy. You're that kind of guy. You're not a Kamala guy. And they laughed about it. Then they talked a bunch of bro talk a little bit more. So I kind of skipped a little bit over that. Then they talked about high-speed internet versus cable internet and Starlinks and how that is better for the world. Apparently, I'm thinking like solar panels versus like digging for like the fiber in the ground. He's saying like people are so concerned with the environment, yet they want to grab in the ground for the fiber, but won't let Elon put his solar panels. But I guess the environmentalists argue, I don't know, you guys can tell me, that if you put it on the sky from the sun, it's gonna burn us up. That's how I think they're looking at it. Whereas it's still bad too, because if you dig in too deep in the ground, that creates sinkholes. So neither is good for the environment. I guess you got to go with, well, I guess each party going to do what they want to do, essentially, with that. I don't think us as regular, everyday citizens really have a dog in that fight. So when they start talking those big policy plans like that, really, that's where the money at. Wherever the money at, that's what they're going to do. So I don't pay attention to them. But he wants Starlinks. He talks about waste abuse and fraud. And again, I wrote a note. I said, I think it's on both sides, but waste abuse and fraud, because you can look at the landfills and all the disgustingness, and then you can look at the cleanup. And each president, what I noticed is during election time, they clean up the landfills. So that's on both sides. And then they make a muck when they're not actively campaigning. Outside of that, they talked about Apple and how during his time, I didn't fact check this one, but he said during his time, Apple brought their money back to the US and they created facilities here. So he wants to do more of that because he doesn't feel like it's right that our chips and our technology goes overseas, whereas then we have to pay for our own information, selling us back to us. And he was really upset about that. He talked about the strong regulations that we have on our own people, but the lenient regulations we have on people like China. I guess a good example of that would be steel, like I know, or in aluminum. I know a lot of people say that their construction workers, companies want the cheaper aluminum, cheaper steel from China rather than getting it homegrown here. And I just think that has to do with so many of the regulations and the quality of the steel that we have to use here as an American steel company versus what China can use, and they don't have to fit within the regulations necessarily, right? So then he also talked about, I talked about that in the beginning. If COVID wasn't around, it would have been a better economy, would have been paying off debts, decreasing tax deductions. He talked about environmental debt that keeps people out of the market. I thought this was a good point, y'all. So he said, and that's the crazy thing. I'm not trying to, if you're a Kamala fan, I appreciate you for joining. If you're a Trump fan, I appreciate you for joining. I'm not trying to steer you either way. I'm just telling you about the interviews, because they have the right to share their platforms, their opinions, and you guys have the right to hear both sides. And when somebody make a point, just because I'm a black woman don't mean I can't say, okay, Trump made a point here. If he make a point, he make a point, and he made a point here. So he said what he feels personally about environmental debt is it keeps people out of the market to produce their own oil. But he also talked about lakes and ponds, which I thought was really interesting, because he said, and I relate to this because I used to work for an engineering company, and we call it pay to play. And I told you guys about this last week. If you don't furnish a politician's pocket, you ain't getting nothing done in that town. So you from little town USA, and you don't pay the mayor of Littletown, USA, you're not going to be able to build water pipes throughout that city. You got to pay to play. So he talked about how the reason he was such a good president is because he dealt with the hardest politicians in the world, which is New York City. I said, shout out to New York. So he said because he was able to deal with New York policy and how much impact he made, he said dealing with the feds was easy. He said because New York is the baddest for real. Now, he didn't say that, but that's essentially what he's saying. Like, New York is the baddest for real. So he was saying, like, I could deal with the feds easy. So that's what he was basically saying. And he said because he had that experience up in Albany and he had to convince people from power plants to pay these massive fees. Like he said, he had a facility where it was this little pond, and he said that's a lake. And he had to pay the people to create a distinction between the pond removal versus a lake removal. Can you think about the cost? He said and that's how the environmentalists play, because they will be like, oh, this is a pond, this is a lake. And he'd be like, no, everybody can see that's a pond. And they'll charge you lake fees. And that's a whole different excavation to clear that out so you can build your land. So he's like, it literally is something that will post you out for 15, 20 years. Like, here's one project, they couldn't decide if it was a pond or a lake, and it took them 15 years to decide on it. And they play like that. And throughout that 15 years, you still got to pay them people. So that's how that's go back to what he said in the beginning. Good people do bad deeds with good intention, but because they get comfortable and complacent, they do stupid stuff like that. So that's what he said about that. And I thought, y'all can't say that ain't interesting. That is very interesting. So, all right, after that, he talked about Cali. He talked about Cali. He said it's some BS when it comes down to the irrigation system. He said, if you notice all these wildfires in Cali, but they have a straight streamline from Canada, which does what? Have a lot of snow. And snow does what? Is water. So he was like, if they wanted to, they could just create an irrigation system straight down from Canada to Cali, and some of the places would not be dry. But he said it's just a dumb irrigation system with a lot of policy and a lot of red line and red tape involved, so that they can't create solutions for that he feels are simple. But you know, all solutions that you think are simple are not that simple. So he said he had something on the table for Gavin Newsom when he was president to sign, and Gavin Newsom said, no ma'am, no, we're not going to do this. So he said with that, he just wasn't able to do anything for California. Thus now that we see all these wildfires. We actually just had a wildfire here in Jersey, which is crazy. Why y'all be coming over here assuming? Because my mama said, if you assume, you make it out of you and me. Okay, don't assume who I'm voting for. I'm just giving y'all see, the thing is with us, I think we got to a point where y'all don't even want information anymore. I love information. You can't, if I vote for somebody, I'm going to know why I voted for them. If I don't vote for somebody, I'm going to know why I didn't vote for them. Good or bad. And like I said, there are some policies that I do agree with Trump on. There are some policies that I do agree with Kamala on. Both have opinions that I agree and highly disagree on. But I love the information regardless. So just sit back and relax and enjoy the information. If you don't want it, keep strolling. Because in about 10 minutes, I'm about to start on Kamala anyway. But we still on Trump. So enjoy the Trump part. And I don't even know if I'm going to be able to do the Kamala part, to be honest with you, because I got to go pick up my baby soon. So we might just finish Trump because it was a lot. Y'all know that was 3 hours. So this is hard to get through. So let's get to the next part. So yeah, he talked about Cali and the irrigation system. And then he talked about the way, and this is a big contentious problem on both sides. Like I heard Democrats talking about this in regards to Biden. But I also heard Republicans talk about this particular point that I'm about to make in terms of the Republicans, that they did not like the way that Biden pulled the guys out of Afghanistan. So he hounded that topic. He made it, and that's one of those things where you have to agree. You see them people holding on the side of that plane? There's no way you can't agree that was kind of a sketchy exit. Understand that, but they just did it that way so that they can say that Biden removed the troops because we were getting towards election time. And that was like Biden's first election debate. Remember, it was around that time. He wanted to say that, even though Biden couldn't show up the way he was supposed to. Because remember, people forget, but that reason Kamala came in, because Biden was on that debate. Y'all remember, never forget. And Trump would have won. So Kamala has shifted the trajectory of the race. But initially, the truth is, come on, go watch it. 2-3 months ago, Trump, Biden. Okay, So, all right, fast forward. Now, he talked about the whole enemy within thing, that people think he's a bad guy for saying this and that, but he really truly in his heart of hearts feel like there are bad people in this country. I was thinking like them people is really within, because why would they let that man go up there and make them jokes? What kind of enemy within is that? I think he got an enemy within on his campaign. Because why would they let that man go up there and say that about them Latinos a week out? Why? Whoever did that, that's the true enemy within, y'all. I'm telling you, that was crazy. That was crazy. I got it on my page. Go check it out. Anyway, if you don't know what I'm talking about. So then he talked about, he said something nice about Obama, which I thought was interesting. He said Obama was a fine guy. Like, they shook hands. It was like a fine trade over. He said, but the difference between him and Obama is that Russia and all the big wigs in North Korea would not meet with Obama. He talked about, what's the guy in North Korea? He said that, oh yeah, he said that he said that they would not meet with Obama. He's like, Obama's a fine guy, but they wouldn't meet with him. They would only meet with me. So he talked about that. He talked about the whole same spiel about dumping their prisons over here. I'm not gonna go into that one. Y'all know that one. Dumping their prisons. They're bringing their migrants. They're bringing their poor. They're bringing their weak. Which to me is funny. I don't get offended by that, because y'all know not my ancestors, because we were slaves. But the majority, the bulk of the people in America were prisoners. Like, they were indentured servers and criminals. That's why they overtook the country. You got a bunch of criminals versus a bunch of soldiers, and the criminals started outweighing the soldiers and the British soldiers. And the British soldiers said, time to go. We got to get up out of here because they're not listening to us no more. And it's only us and then them. And then they started getting more and more powerful. The American criminals that they dropped off from Britain to the Americas as a form of punishment. And then what you think you're gonna have with a country full of criminals? That's still our foundation, essentially. Not my people foundation, because we had no parts in that. But we, you know what I'm saying. But you know, that is the foundation of the country. Shout out to, what is his name? Crispus Attucks. He was the first man to die in one of the wars. Black man to die. And but yeah, all around all that time, they was acting a fool. So Trump is scared of that. Because Trump, what I realized watching the interview, he talked about the 1800s. He talked about, I told you, McKinley. He talked about Jimmy Carter. He's a historian, like myself. And he likes to read. And he's also, we're going to do that. So once this election over, we're going to do like a book club, kind of we're going to read everybody's books. We're going to read Obama's books, Trump's books, Melania's books. And we're going to have a good time like dissecting them. Condoleezza Rice is probably the first one we're going to start at, because I feel like that's nice and neutral. But yeah, he's a historian in terms of that. Like, he likes information. So with that, he sees and that's what I see. When you read history and study it, you see the same patterns over and over again. And because of that, he sees that pattern that I just talked about the U.S. created on criminals and how the criminals overtook the British rule. Same kind of thing. He's seeing that they can do that too. The Venezuelan gangs. And I don't like to do that. Like, you know, what he's said, the Latin gangs, essentially, is what he's describing, can overtake us just like we overtook the Brits. That's where that fear comes from. So it is a real fear, because it is a historical fear. All right, so let's bring it on home. So now he talked about within that the border czar calling Kamala that, saying that, you know, she's just allowing the floodgates to be open. And did I write this? Okay, yeah, I did. I said, it's not that, meaning like, is this in my opinion, or is this straight from the podcast? This is in my opinion. I said, it's not that Trump, to me, is necessarily racist. I say, but the problem is he can have all the good intentions in the world, but the people who support him are like this comedian guy from yesterday. And the problem with that is when he is associated with that, it brings racism to his doorstep, right? And I said, hey, boss, how you doing? And then, so I said, also, I gave an example of the movie Get Out. And how, you know how like sometimes you can bring somebody to the house and the energy is off, they're not sure what it is, but then you love the person, that's the love of your life. When you leave them in that creepy family with you when you go to the bathroom real quick, and that uncomfortable feeling that they have to endure while they sit there with your racist cousins, that is the problem with Donald Trump, and why black people understand where he come from, can see some of the economic successes that he may have for us, but we also get a little afraid that he might be the cousin, the boyfriend that leaves us in the kitchen with the racist grandma while he goes to the bathroom. That's what, that little bit of understanding is why black people have that kind of fear with him. So, like I said, he might not be the racist, but grandma might be. Okay, all right. So, he talked about, yeah, I said I see the downside of what he's speaking, like in the 1970s. Oh, also some of the downside of what I see with him, like in the 1970s, they already did the tariff thing. So if he's an historian, he's seen the success of it in the 1800s, but he's also seen the downside of it, which he should have seen if he is a real historian. In the 1970s, they did the same tariffs on the Volkswagens, and they increased it, I believe, by 25%, and the whole Volkswagen business basically went out. Remember those beautiful little Volkswagen cars from the 70s with the little big circle and the W? You don't see them anymore like that, because it killed the market. The tariffs killed the market for it. And so he has to talk about the terrorists in a negative way too. So he can't just say, oh, terrorists work. Yeah, they work, but also they can bite you in the butt. In recent years, when he did a tariff on the laundromat business, when he was in office in 2016, he did his own tariffs on the laundry industry. And what that did was double the cost of washers and dryers for us here in the US. And this is a current, hey Tibu, and this is a current change in his that his administration made for us that kind of impacted us negatively, because now look how much, if you go to the laundromat, look how much we're paying, because they have to pay double. It went from like $1,000 for a laundry machine to $2,000, $3,000 for a laundry machine now, and those are now being supplemented through us, because we have to pay higher laundry for our laundry machines and when we go to the laundromats. So that kind of is something he has to think about more. Again, they started talking bro talk again, so I fast forwarded that, more MMA talk. Then finally he kind of wrapped it up and started talking about him teaming up with Robert Kennedy. He talked about Robert Kennedy is really diligent with looking at the chemicals in food. He said 70% of men are ineligible to have births because of the pesticides in the food. So he wants to address that, because we don't talk about male infertility enough, and that's something that Robert F. Kennedy wants to talk about. So what I also noticed is Trump is very, like, he macho man. So men love that. So that's why another reason black men specifically, who are also the most probably macho of the macho, are gravitating towards him, right? So again, I'm telling you guys this unbiased, just the facts, sir, just the facts. Oh, thank you. See, he gets me. I'm trying to be as unbiased as I can, but you know they be making it hard. They was over here arguing with me earlier, saying, "Why are you voting for him? Why are you voting for her?" And I was like, "I'm not. I'm just trying to get y'all the news, baby." So you get it because you've been here, but they don't get it yet, but they will. So okay, where were we? So big pharma. So another thing, so if Robert Kennedy, if Trump wins, they will make Robert Kennedy the healthcare person. He said, gonna fix all the problems. Gonna fix all the health problems in the USA. That's what he said. So yeah, so he said that. Oh, you saw that? They be trying me, but I'll be trying to, you know what I'm saying? But I think I'm gonna do Kamala after, because I want to flesh out each side, and I got to go. And yeah, so that's what Robert F. Kennedy will be. He will be the healthcare guy. He said he would. He actually has a love for environmental protection, but he said he's too serious with that, so he's not going to put him on that. Just big pharma. And he also talked about how he's going to put RFK on the food deserts. He's going to put RFK on just focusing on just general the health of the food industry. And he also talked about his own personal health. And he talked about how, which is interesting because he never put out the report, but he said that he had passing with flying colors. His physical health is unbelievable. He said it's wow, it's unbelievable. I got the perfect health because my daddy. That's what he literally said. He says daddy got the best genes in the world. So he got the best genes in the world. That's what he said. So he had me cracking up, y'all. He was like, I'm perfect. He said he does golf so that he can keep good mental health focus, and that's what keeps him so snatched and sexy. That's what he said. No, but he said he got it from his daddy. And then he talked about, he said there were, he started talking about his indictment, honey. it got real. This is when he got a little more serious because he's pissed off about that. And which, you know, he has the right to be. He said it was giving third world country, babes. That's what he said. He said, we don't do this. We too classy to this. He said, because I could have did that to Hillary Clinton, but I did not. He was a sassy little baby at this time. He said, I did not. He said, I could have locked her up. And I did not want that on our country. He said, I did y'all a favor so that the headlines would not say, President of United States First Lady indicted. He said he wanted to keep the country clean, but because they played with him now, he said he don't know what he gonna do when he get in office. But he got a list and he's checking it twice, baby. That's what he said. And I posted his little loyalty revenge concept. So he not even joking. He been this way since the 90s. So go check my little meme out on my page that I just posted. So I know he's serious about it. And then he also said that he lied. They lied. They said they had 51 agents lied about 22,000 votes, and that there was that's a small margin, essentially a 17-point difference, which would have made a big difference for him to win. So he's kind of really salty about that. He talked about Joe, his declining health. He talked about, you know, the debate and how well he did with Joe. And then that's why they forced him kind of to do. He said they made the price right with Kamala, essentially. The loyalty revenge concept is on my page. And it's from 94. It's back there. Yeah, so he ain't changed. He literally is the same exact person. And I have more clips from that interview that I'm thinking about. But I don't know, you know. Elon he be on me a little bit. He be giving me no views on those kind of things. I know one video had 26 likes and 3 views. How they liking it if they ain't look at it? So anyway. And so he talked about Joe's declining health. He talked about how the price was right. So he went to the debate, but he kind of wish he kind of didn't. And he didn't say he doesn't wish he did. He just said Kamala was really polite and it was a decent interaction between him, but he's not doing it again because he has no it's not going to benefit him to do that in any way. No, that makes perfect sense. And then he talked about his McDonald's. He kind of regrets doing it a little bit. He said with the McDonald's thing, what he wishes he would have done is thought about it a little more, because he thought it was just going to be like a one-off, a cute little 1-2 to kind of hit at Kamala that she actually didn't work at McDonald's. And then Joe Rogan kind of pushed him are you sure she didn't work at McDonald's? He said, well, McDonald's don't have no records of it, but McDonald's wasn't taking records back in the 1970s like that. If they did, usually, I know every company, I worked at the insurance company, and most companies after 10 years, especially if you're no longer there, they'll shred anything 10 to 15 years of employment. So they don't need that because they're not getting audited for that. So if she worked there or didn't work there in the 1970s or early 90s, it really wouldn't have made a difference. That's an easy lie to hide behind. Even if it's true or not, that's an easy lie to hide behind. And then, more election fraud talk, which I'm not going to get to. One thing he did say, y'all know he always got one. The clock is right twice a day. And this one, he was right. I'm going to go to my grave with this Gavin Newsom voter ID thing. It's wrong. Hate it. Hate it, hate it. They need IDs. They need IDs. And even this, I told y'all, this is tricky, right? Election fraud with the voter, that started with COVID. And he talked about that, how COVID created election ballots. That wasn't really a thing. People had to go in person with their IDs. And I remember that time, but he was basically saying now it's to the point where and he's saying they need to go, they need to go in person and have their IDs. But I listened to Kamala. Her reasoning was low income people, which is kind of true. He talking, and what she doesn't want to say, this is the unspoken part. She talk about them sundown towns, y'all. She talk about the towns where they basically say, you got ID? Let me see it. Take that ID and cut it on up. You better go ahead on home. So she's basically in them towns where they can't vote, no matter if they got ID or not, they should be able to vote. And I understand it, but how can you prove that they're American citizens? So I don't like it, but I don't know how to fix it either. I don't have an answer for it. I'm gonna think about it a little bit, but I don't have an answer for how can they help those old women in the middle of them sundown towns who don't even know we free get to the voting booth, because every vote counts. How, like, my daddy was in Polk County, Florida, so like, you know, that's a real if you know town. And if when I'm in that town, I know there's certain places I can't go, I know there's certain things I can't say, I know certain people I can't look in their eye, and I just know my place, or I won't have no place. Like, you got to know your place in certain places. And she's saying those are the towns that shouldn't require ID. But I don't know. I don't know how to fix it. So I'll think on it, guys. And then they talked more about the trans community, the women's sports. That's gonna be his holy grail, because a lot of people agree with him on that. He talked about healthcare and the bad policies, and how Kamala wants to raise the taxes on everything. And she said, raise taxes, but who's going to win when we raise taxes to higher earners? Because there's a problem with that. He said the problem with that is the rich people are going to leave, and then they're going to build their companies in other places. But can't they do that with the tariffs? That's the first thing I thought. If they can do that because you want to tax American citizens, you want to tax the rich to help American citizens, what's the difference between the companies leaving here, like the Mitsubishis, and going because you're taxing them? It's the same concept, but he doesn't see it that way. So you're either going to tax the rich or tax the poor. We're going to get it either way. If you do the tariffs, the companies overseas are going to increase our cost to buy the car. But then if you tax the rich here, they're still going to increase or they're going to decrease the amount of employees they're hiring. Either way, we're going to lose. But for me, I feel like it's better that you tax the little bit of rich that are here, and then kind of try to create wealth. And I like what Kamala said. She said, and I'll get into this in her Shannon interview, she said what she's thinking about doing is, you know, those citizen banks, and most of them are owned by billionaires. So she's saying create those companies and those banks in the low income community, help teach them help invest in their small business associations, and then you can kind of get the charity credit and all that stuff off your taxes, and you can help the small businesses and small communities while helping your people, versus just uprooting your entire company and moving it all to a whole nother country. It's kind of like what Amazon was doing in the beginning, like where they were opening up in low income communities and investing, creating jobs. That's what she's basically wants to do. But she wants to do that with billionaires, and billionaires funneling that into like charities, funneling that into small business associations. The beauty of that is it will go directly to the people. The scary part of that might never get to the people, if you know what I mean. All right, so let's fast forward to UFO. This was the fun part. This is the wrap up. They started talking about UFOs, and if Trump, he got a little nervous. Trump was like, we can't really talk about this, and the interview was like basically over. So I personally believe in UFOs. My mom has always, like, her favorite movie is Planet of the Apes. Like, she loves that kind of stuff, like sci-fi. So we used to watch like stupid movies like Conehead and all that stuff back in the day. My mom loved that extraterrestrial kind of crap, and so I believe in it. And sound like Trump do too. He said it could be two things, though. You know, he got to blame China for everything. So he said, because remember the balloon, or the drone balloon thing? He said because of that, it kind of made him not necessarily believe in UFOs, but he does believe in them. Like, he's seen the documents, the classified. He's talked to some pilots, like, who actually seen some silver, like, stuff in space, like, that have freaked them out when they were on their travel. So he's like, I know it's real. Some jet engine pilots, he said, and they go really far up. So he was like, it's something out there. He's like, and there's no way all these other galaxies exist and there's nothing living out there. He believes in them. But then he talked about, but China is advanced so well that because of that incident with the drone, he believes it could have been China, y'all. He thinks that UFOs might be China. And I thought that was really interesting, and I said that makes a lot of sense. And UFOs kind of look like, I ain't gonna say that, but you get what I'm saying. So, okay. Then he talked about, he believes in prophets. Y'all gotta listen to Trump. He's interesting. He started talking about prophets and how prophets say that the Middle East ain't gonna end soon. Oh, he was talking stuff at the end. I think Joe Rogan was like, okay, he going into the granddaddy mode. Let me like wrap this up. And then he says, yeah, China is behind 15 years, but will catch up with us in the next 5 years. He talked about Russia is a war machine, whether you like it or not. He said that wants to end that Russian machine. He said he can't say what he will say in those meetings, but he said he's knows what he was saying in those meetings, but he can't tell us because it's a man-to-man conversation that needs to be had behind closed doors. So he said, but he knows that once he's had them conversation, the conversation gonna stop. World stop. You know he Beyonce because he did Coachella, then he did Madison Square Garden. So he said world stop when he get in office. And then he talked about some French president. I forgot what he said. He said he told him to stop doing something, and he stopped doing something. So that's his example. And then I was like, who is this French president, and why he letting Donald Trump sell him like that? Let me see what this French president has to say about Donald Trump. Lo and behold, the French president is kissing Donald Trump. But listen here, I got the tweet. Y'all see that? I screen grabbed it for y'all because I said, oh, so maybe he ain't lying. That's the only thing I kind of fact checked. I said, what grown man political figure you called and going to stop doing something? Who you think you are? So I looked it up, and he kind of did. So this is what he said. This is on July 14, 2024. My thoughts are with President Trump, the victim of an assassination attempt. I send my wishes for a speedy recovery. A spectator has died. Several are injured. It is a tragedy for our democracies. France shares the shock and indignation of the American people. AKA, I'm rocking with Trump. Got it? So that lets you know Trump does have relationships globally that are pretty powerful, because if he's in cahoots with the president of France, that lets you know. Last final thoughts, he talked about the American iPhone, how all the chips and the parts are made in other countries, and he's going to bring that back home. He talked about chip companies bringing that back home, oil companies bringing that part home. He talked about Taiwan and how they stole our technical chips for a lot of our electronic devices, and how much money they've made off of us and how we lost that business. But he's going to try to bring that back home for any new technological advances that Americans made. It needs to stay here in confidential records, so that if we create it, because we have the most brightest minds in the world, then we need to own it. And the final words to Joe Rogan were, if this interview looks crazy and I'm a little off, I'm going to blame this guy. And I laughed, and I think that summed up Donald Trump. If anything in his presidency goes awry, he gonna blame JD Vance. No, I'm just joking. All right, y'all, that's it for Trump. So I don't have time to go over Kamala, but I will say she met with, but I'm gonna come back later tonight, or if not, I'll try to do Wednesday at 2. And we'll do a part 2 for this. But I'll just give a quick little rundown. So she met with Club Shay Shay, which I thought was a good counter to the Joe Rogan thing. It's like right after it. It was actually good timing. Also, for the record, I'll read you what Joe Rogan said, because Joe Rogan has declined Kamala Harris's visit for now. So I know the headlines are saying Joe Rogan declines, but it's kind of capped. So just listen to what he actually said. He says, Joe Rogan declined. Also, for the record, the Harris campaign has not passed on doing the podcast. They offer a date for Tuesday, which is the election date, or maybe it was today. It says, but I have to travel to her, and she only wants to do an hour. I strongly feel that the best thing to do would be to be in studio in Austin, said Rogan. My sincere wish is just to have a nice conversation with her, to get to know her as a human being, and I really hope we can make that happen. So it says the Harris campaign has declined to comment on Rogan's latest post. And with that, I'm going to leave you until maybe tomorrow, maybe tonight. Just put your notifications on, and we'll go over the Shay Shay interview. But I appreciate you for joining me today to at least get the Trump piece in, so you know what's going on with that Joe Rogan interview, my opinions, my thoughts on it. Overall, I personally feel like Donald Trump is a narcissist. That's it. That's my summary. And if you love him, it's because you have somebody in your family like him. If you love him, it's because you see yourself in him. And I don't judge you, and I love you. And until tomorrow, I'll see you guys. Always maintain what I like to say. Always maintain your MVP, your morals, your values, and your principle. And y'all take care until next time. Bye, guys.